back, we are going to talk about William Wallace. And no, not Braveheart, but the true facts about Sir Wallace. I'm hoping you enjoy my story. Please hit the like and subscribe if you enjoy my channel. Sir William Wallace, born 1270, probably near Paisley, Renfrew, Scotland, and died August 23, 1305, London, England, one of Scotland's greatest national heroes and the chief inspiration for Scottish resistance to the English King Edward. He served as guardian of the Kingdom of Scotland during the first years of the long and ultimately successful struggle to free his country from English rule. Wallace was the second son of Sir Malcolm Wallace of Elderson, Renfrewshire. The elder Wallace was a minor landowner and a vassal of James, 5th Steward of Scotland. In 1296, King Edward I of England deposed and imprisoned the Scottish king John de Balliol and declared himself ruler of Scotland. Sporadic resistance had already occurred when, in May 1297, Wallace and a band of some 30 men burned Lanark and killed its English sheriff. Joined by Sir William Douglas the Hardy, Wallace next marched on Scone, drove out the English justiciar, and attacked the English garrisons between the rivers Forth and Tay. The Scottish steward, Robert the Bruce, later King Robert I, and others now gathered an army, but it was forced to surrender at Irvine by Sir Henry de Percy and Sir Robert de Clifford. In July 1297, Wallace, however, remained in action with a large company in the forest of Selkirk, according to a contemporary report made to Edward. Wallace laid siege to Dundee but abandoned it to oppose Andrew de Moray, an English army that was advancing towards Stirling under John de Warenne. Surrey failed to bring Wallace to terms outside Stirling, and on the morning of September 11, 1297, the English began to file across the narrow bridge over the Forth. In a position northwest of the Abbey Craig, Wallace and Moray held back their troops until about half the English had crossed. They then attacked with such sudden fury that almost all who had crossed were killed or driven into the river and drowned. With the rest of his army, Surrey retreated hastily, having first destroyed the bridge, but the Scots crossed by afoot and pursued them. With only a small following, Surrey escaped to Berwick and York. For the moment, Scotland was almost free of occupation. A letter long survived in which Moray and Wallace, writing from Haddington on October 11th, urged the Hanseatic towns of Hamburg and Elbeck to resume trade with Scotland, now recovered by war from the power of the English. Moray, who had been wounded at Stirling Bridge, died soon afterward. Wallace now ravaged Northumberland and Cumberland, burning Elwick and besieging Carlisle. To the monks of Hexham, however, he granted special protection. Early in 1298, Surrey returned and relieved the English-held castles of Roxburgh and Berwick, but by Edward's orders advanced no farther. Edward himself crossed the Tweed on July 3 and moved towards Stirling with a strong force of heavy cavalry, a body of archers, and Irish and Welsh auxiliaries. Wallace retreated slowly, wasting the country behind him so Edward's force could not resupply itself on the march. With his army half-starved and mutinous, Edward was on the point of retreat when, early on July 21, near Kirkliston, he learned that Wallace was awaiting him near Falkirk. Edward advanced and on the following day found Wallace on a carefully chosen sloping ground, his front protected by a small river. The English cavalry, having with some difficulty crossed the river and the adjacent marshy ground, launched repeated charges on the four Chilterns circular battle formations of Wallace's spearmen. They drove off the field the small body of Scottish horse under Comyn, but made no impression on the Chilterns and suffered considerable losses. The archers, however, now advanced, and their deadly volleys soon broke up the spearmen's ranks, and further cavalrycle. Thousands of the Scots were slain in the pursuit, and among the dead were Sir John Stewart and Sir John de Graham. Wallace retired northward with the survivors, burning Stirling and Perth as he went. Edward, unable to maintain his forces in Scotland, returned south, reaching Carlisle on September 8. There is some evidence that Wallace went to France in 1299 and thereafter returned to Scotland to act as a solitary guerrilla leader, but from the autumn of 1299 nothing is known of his activities for more than 4 years. The rebellion he had led nevertheless continued until 1304, at which point most Scottish nobles submitted to Edward. How much this continued resistance was due to Wallace's influence is uncertain, but Wallace was the one leader to whom Edward would never offer any terms of capitulation and whom he most persistently tried to capture. On August 5, 1305, Wallace was arrested near Glasgow by Sir John Menteith, and according to 2 early chroniclers, by treachery. He was carried to Dumbarton Castle and then to London, having possibly been brought before King Edward along the way. On August 23, 1305, Wallace was conveyed to Westminster Hall, where he was indicted and condemned to death. There was no trial because he was declared a traitor to the king. Wallace emphatically denied this charge, as he had never sworn allegiance to Edward. That same day he was hanged, disemboweled, and finally beheaded and quartered at Smithfield. His head was set on London Bridge and his limbs exposed at Newcastle, Berwick, Stirling, and Perth. In 1306, Bruce raised the rebellion that eventually won independence for Scotland. Wallace was unmarried and is not known to have fathered any children. Many of the stories surrounding Wallace have been traced to a late 15th century romance ascribed to Harry the Minstrel, or Blind Harry. The most popular tales are not supported by documentary evidence, but they show Wallace's firm hold on the imagination of his people. A huge monument 1861 to 1869. Though he eventually fell in battle, his legacy lived on, inspiring generations of Scots to carry on the fight for freedom and justice. But what is it that makes the story of William Wallace so enduring, so captivating to the human spirit? Is it his bravery, his unwavering resolve in the face of overwhelming odds? Or is it his selflessness, his willingness to lay down his life for the cause of justice and freedom? Perhaps it is a combination of these qualities woven together into the fabric of a true hero, a man who will forever be remembered as a champion of the Scottish people. The story of William Wallace will continue to inspire us, to fill us with wonder and awe for generations to come. It is a tale of bravery, of determination, of a spirit that will not be broken, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. And though the years may pass, and the world may change, the legacy of William Wallace will endure, a shining beacon of hope for those who would stand against oppression and fight for what is right, against endless odds.